Ooh, here we go. All right, guys. We drop a radial filter and add texture to that. So I'm gonna kind of show you where I would. I'm going with the hot shots right off the top. So you're gonna position yourself lower and then kind of shoot up towards the car. If you want to learn some things about Lightroom and your car photography, stay tuned to this video. TMR Media here. Today I'm coming at you guys with your guys' photo critique. We're gonna be looking at your guys' photos here on the computer, and I'm gonna be giving you guys some advice, maybe a couple tips per photo. Hopefully I can help you guys out. We will dive right into it right here. So here we go. All right, everybody. So we're gonna go ahead and import all your guys' photos. First thing, all right, so first photo here. So this shot here was done by Christian Mike. Christian Mike _ is his handle on Instagram. So to start off, I'm not a huge fan of black and white photos. However, I think you went with the right choice on this. Being that it's a classic car, it kind of matches that vibe, even though you're shooting on digital. In terms of composition, it looks pretty solid. I mean, you got it in this rule of thirds here, and the lighting's pretty solid. I will say, I am noticing the highlights are a little bit blown out here, and obviously in the background too. I'm not sure. It looks like this was a shadowed area, and that the sun was kind of hitting over here, as you could see. Hold on, sorry. As you can see over here, the sun was hitting and the shadow of the trees here. So my guess is there's probably, as you can see in the reflections here, there's probably trees on this right side here. So we're also probably dealing with a little bit of that. However, I think it's pretty well nailed here. I do like the little bit of grain here. It also looks really nice. But I think that's all for this one. We're gonna move straight into the next one. So the next photo, submitted by 454 Square Body. So we got a Chevy SS here, and I do like the colors on this photo. I think we're looking at an iPhone shot, which of course is nothing wrong with that. Of course, you can just kind of tell the depth of contrast, and the angle kind of potentially looks like it was shot on a phone. I like the coloring on the building here, and also the contrast from the orange and the blue in the sky. However, I would say the composition here, I'm not a huge fan of it being very bottom catered. If you were to move the photo up into the center more, or the car up into the center more, I think you'd be looking at a much better composition, maybe a little less of this sky, because kind of here is just empty space. So in terms of the composition, this doesn't provide much. You can also do this. You could still provide the same amount of sky in the background if you were to position yourself lower, like where you're actually taking the picture, and then shoot more up at the car. So if you got the phone, you're gonna position yourself lower and then kind of shoot up towards the car. And that should help you kind of provide more sky, but also still have the car a little bit more centered in the shot. So I think we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next shot. Ooh, here we go. All right, guys. So this one's by my buddy JW. He's over in Arizona. I will say this one's gonna be a little bit harder. His handle is JW _ car photos. So if you want to go see some awesome photos out of the Arizona area, go drop him a follow. To start off critiquing, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. I will say I love the composition. I think he has it just a little bit on the inside of this the thirds rule here. As you can see here, I'm going to kind of outline it with my cursor. Sorry. The one thing I'll say right off the top, as you can see, the car is kind of off of the road. I do like the positioning of where the car is. However, I think the car a little bit more like actually in the lane would look a little bit more natural, because obviously cars drive in the lane, but also it would have brought it a little bit more into focus. So as you can see here, I got this rule of third right here. It would have brought it more into focus into the shot. So if I were to crop this, oops, wrong thing. So I'm gonna act like I'm cropping this. What I would have done is if you could have brought the car more into the lane, it would have looked a little bit more like this essentially. It would have just brought the car a little bit more in focus and a little bit, I don't know, maybe just a touch better on the composition, but that's like really nitpicking, I'm gonna be honest with you, J-Dub. So let me uncrop this. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and let's just revert all settings. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna do one more tip for you just because I want to go kind of in depth on this one. It's a little bit harder. I really love the colors on the sky. You got the nice yellow to blue to even like the pinkish oranges. That's killer. I mean, you can't get much better for sunsets than that. I do like how you also darken the foreground here. I don't know if that was natural from the shadow of the car you're shooting from or if you added that, but if you did, perfect. If you didn't add it, it looks good as well. So you did that right. One thing I would say, one thing I like to do right behind the car for roller shots. So sometimes, damn, I'm messing this up. Sometimes with roller shots, as you can see, this is like super buttery. And I love the way this looks. However, sometimes it makes the car look like it's going even faster if you actually drop a radial filter and add texture to that. So I'm gonna kind of show you where I would add the radial filter. So I'd add the radial filter, maybe feather it out like that, probably make it a little bit wider. And basically I would add a touch of clarity and a touch of texture, maybe even a little bit of brightness. And as you can kind of see, you know, I kind of just brought in a little bit of extra. It almost looks more blurry here. The softness looks good, and I understand that that's definitely your style. So I think that works really well. I think this is personally the way I do it. I mean, once you zoom in, yeah, because I'm editing a JPEG, it's a little bit blurry and you have the noise. But I think if you did this with a raw photo, and you add that little touch from right in that background of a little bit of texture, I think it'll look great. So I think I'm gonna move on. Thanks JW for submitting your photo. This is a really good shot. Really hard to nitpick honestly on this one, but I'm trying to give you guys the best feedback I can get. So, all right, on to the next photo. Let's see, oh, another good one. This one's, I'm going with the hot shots right off the top. So, these are a little bit more difficult, but I hope you guys are interested in this one. So we have a older Volkswagen Bug, it looks like. I'm not sure on the year model or nothing. We have a really solid shot here, honestly. I think it was perfectly exposed. I don't think you could have really done much more for exposure. You did down stop probably 1.5, I would say, probably 1 to 2 stops down from what is considered proper exposure. And I think you did that well. The reason why I'm saying that is because you did retain all the highlights here in the sky. And I really like that shot. That composition looks great. You used the, as you can see here, he used the fence here to frame the car. I don't know, I think that's like a perfect example. It shows you not only the environment that he's in, but it also shows, you know, kind of exactly where to look. You know where to look in this photo, and it's right at that car. You know, you can't miss it. Here's the bad parts. I'm gonna say I have noticed since I've been talking about it. I would say the car is a little bit unnaturally sitting in terms of how the road looks. The road is very, very dark, and it looks good. I like the texture on it and the darkness. However, because of that, the car looks very out of place. So maybe one way I would have done this, I'll try to show you guys here. I would have done a radial filter, and I would have taken it kind of along the natural contour of the ground, of the street. Sorry, I don't want to affect this or the sky too much, but I probably would have brightened it up a touch. And then honestly, it's pretty much good right there, and hopefully it detects the subject right, but I'm gonna subtract subject from that. And if you look at before and after, it's kind of just a touch to bring the car more naturally into the brightness of the ground. So your car is definitely brightened up quite a bit, which I like. You just should try, I think, to match it better with the ground. So that's my personal opinion. Of course, if that's your style, that makes it a little bit tricky, but that's what I would have done there. And I'm gonna go one more critique. I do notice that I'm sure you probably took a select sky filter and you selected the entire sky, right? You maybe even brought down the highlights a bit more, maybe added a touch of saturation. And I do really like that. However, I'm noticing the actual mask selection here maybe was a bit rushed because you might have just clicked it and you might not have refined it, right? So for example, when you selected the sky, you know, it didn't want to pick, or the sky or the background, however you did it, it didn't pick up these areas right here. I'm gonna unselect that, but it didn't pick up these areas where it's kind of highlighted and you have that halo kind of here on the inside of the fence. And it kind of sticks out a bit, you know. As you can see, I darken it down here and you can definitely see it, you know. So that's something you want to try to avoid as much as possible. You need to be really careful with these masks, because when you miss that, you can really see that in the photo. So that's something I would say it's a small minor nitpicky deal, but when you look at those and you see them in the end, it's gonna look so much better. I am gonna do one more because this is a big one. You did brighten up the car and I love it. I really do love the exposure on the car and how well it stands out from the photo. Later in either Photoshop or Lightroom, however you want to do it, select these windows, right? So the windows, especially because what's behind them is now going to be selected with the car, you want to probably use a brush tool and select these windows specifically. And I would darken them down. I'm going to kind of show you how I would do it here real quick. I'll speed it up for you guys, but I'm going to go here and brush it. All right, guys, now that I got it selected, I'm going to bring down the highlights to kind of match. And then you also want to bring down the exposure a little bit. As you can see, you know, you can see spots you're going to miss, and that's fine. You just kind of go back and you refine them a little bit more. For the sake of the tutorial, I'm not going to go too ham on that. But as you can see, it kind of like, I think it looks a little bit weird still, but it doesn't make the background look as bright after selecting that. So let me try to see what I can do here. I brought the highlights down maybe a bit too much. Maybe that matches a little bit more. As you can see, the difference between here and here, it's pretty similar. I will say I'm probably going to add a touch of warmth because they kind of got a little bit of green in them, and maybe even desaturate them a little bit, because windows aren't going to naturally have color in them. It's only going to happen when you kind of, I don't know, when you take the picture, it reflects light. So I think that looks a touch better. It's not much, but as you can see, just that small little touch on the window kind of makes it look a lot less bright and a little bit more natural compared to the background. So overall, this is where I would have brought it. You can see there's after, there's before, just very minor touches, but as you can see, it kind of makes the car sit a little more natural. The windows sit more natural. And then, like I said about the mountains here showing that haze, just try to make sure you refine your selections really good. So I'm gonna move on to the next one. His @ is Lost World Visuals, and that's with a Z on both the visuals and at the end of the visuals. I'll drop it here in the video. All right, next photo. All right, guys. So next photo, we got a Rockstar Energy can, and it's in front of, it looks like a wide-bodied Hellcat, maybe a Scat Pack. I'm not sure exactly. One thing I will say right off the bat, I could tell that the photo was definitely underexposed. I'm not sure if this was because you were shooting without a tripod and you had to like bump up your ISO a bunch, or I'm not exactly sure. The reason why I'm saying that is because as you zoom into the car, and even around the not Monster Energy can, the Rockstar Energy can, you can see a lot of this noise and texture, and of course, as this is out of focus, it's going to have a little bit more, but as you can see, there's a lot of it, and I'm sure that was from brightening in post. There's not much. I do like the composition. However, I would say I think it would be cool to move this Rockstar can into the center of the car, and that would put the can on the rule of thirds, and it would also show both of the headlights. I will say that could be maybe slightly changed for the composition. Coloring, I kind of like the mix of the colors. The red and the blue contrasts, or the cyan, it contrasts pretty well. Like I said, I'm gonna be kind of rough on this one. I will say that, like, you definitely need to get a tripod. You need to shoot this at the proper ISO so that you're not getting too much noise, and also bringing that exposure up, especially since this is a still shot. You don't have to worry about motion, so you can, you know, shoot this and keep it on a tripod perfectly still, and like bump your shutter to like 2 seconds or something if you have to, you know, and get that shot to come out properly still and not too much noise in the background. This one was submitted by Keely, as I'm seeing here on my folder. I don't have an Instagram handle or nothing, but we're gonna move on to the next one. All right, okay, my boy Rufus. Rufus Pics here. You can see his watermark down in the bottom. His handle is Rufus_Pics, or sorry, Rufus.pics on Instagram. I'm really liking his new style. It's pretty unique. He kind of goes for that like sepia tone. I would say it's not something I can really rock with too often. I've done it on a few photos. I think it has its select space and select time to use it. To jump right into it, I do like the sun flare actually. Some people aren't very into that stylistic look of the sun flares. I think he positioned the camera just right to like barely peek it out of the top of this building, and I think that looks really nice. I would say I like the sun flare up here, but I don't like the actual flare spot down here just because it's kind of green. And because the green's showing there, I think it kind of distracts from the overall tone of the photo. I think I had told him this personally. I'm gonna point it out again. Zooming in here, I guess, small little things. I would definitely Photoshop out these, just use a healing brush on those. And in this too, of course. Yeah, just little distractions that like don't necessarily add to the photo. I would take those out. Most of the time I would say I don't like how the sky is blown out and it's white. I think for this style it really works. And plus, because the car is completely in the shade, it's not in direct sunlight, that becomes very, very difficult to bring the exposure on the car properly and the background properly, as opposed to that background here. So that's okay. I think stylistic wise that works perfectly for this. One more thing, I would say that I'm not a fan of these reflections. I'm not sure if that's because you had your polarized turn towards the windshield in the front here. It maybe looks like you did. However, if you can, I know this is a very advanced Photoshop technique. If you can try to work on getting some of these reflections to look a little bit less distracting, and once you're in Photoshop, you know, you can do a lot of stuff with that. I think it'll just help clean up the side of this car, and I think that'll pull it all together. But other than that, beautiful car, beautiful shot. Good job, Rufus. You're getting a lot better, dude. I love to see this. Like even just from when I met you, like exponentially growing. So that's really good to see, man. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this critique of your guys' photos. If you learned anything or you liked the video, please go drop a comment, a like, and subscribe to the channel for more. I hope I'll catch you in the next one. Maybe there'll be a part 2.